I had a really good time with True Detective. The two central characters were great to watch and the actors did superb jobs. That being said, and I'm sure this is going to sound like blasphemy given True Detective Season 1's unshakable reputation, but I did come away from the show feeling like I didn't like it as much as I wanted to like it. I fully acknowledge that this was in part due to the hype. Everywhere you go, on YouTube videos and forums discussing TV shows, the first season of True Detective is held up on a pedestal where it stands alone, high and mighty. And that hype can have an effect. It did have an effect. If this was a random show I found on a late night, I'd be singing its praises, but because I've approached it knowing its reputation, I think it's caused damage. And can you blame me when the Daily Beast calls it one of the most riveting and provocative series, or Alan Sepinwall says it's a potentially fascinating shift in dramatic series television? Even subconsciously, I found myself thinking, how can it really be that good at 8 episodes? And it was good, but I don't think it's beyond criticism, and I didn't actually fully like how it all came together. And to be honest, and I'm not saying this is necessarily what happened, but sometimes because subsequent seasons are so bad, it can make you look back on earlier brilliant work in an even more favourable light, even if at the time you did have problems with it. So I'd be interested to see if anybody shares my criticisms. Let me know in the comment section below. I think it's the final episodes I have issues with many threads receiving unsatisfying conclusions. Spoilers here, of course. But it's always felt like the show was building to something. That intensity I spoke about. The feeling that something went down and we're going to find out what it was. The revelations never matched the hype. Like what went down between Rust and Marty. The issue eventually being that Rust banged Marty's wife felt a little ordinary after all that impressive atmosphere was built up. It's not necessarily disappointing, it's just, oh, that was it the whole time. Let me give you an example. There's a creepy episode ending that ends with a haunting image of a man wearing a gas mask and holding a machete emerging from some backwater swampy area, while Cole narrates, like a lot of dreams, there's a monster at the end of it. It's creepy and it evokes unease, but when we meet the man and his partner, he's just another bum spouting the time is a flat circle and I can see the demon behind your eye stuff. The murder mystery itself too. I'm a sucker for conspiracy movies where it turns out there's so many people in on it, and it's refreshing and realistic that the detectives don't get all the men in the end, just their man. But I couldn't help but feel a ting of unfortunate traditional familiarity with a dime a dozen movies and shows, seeing our villain in the end being a fat hillbilly who is chased through an elaborate contrived labyrinth like an 80s B-movie baddie. We went from drug-fueled occult cabals spanning the entire state and protected by the powers that be, with members so devoted they either kill themselves or are offed if they might be compromised, to an inbred redneck fingering his sister and mowing the occasional lawn. Rust's evolution as well. I mean, he's such a compelling character, stalked by darkness, a tortured soul, and there is a climax to his growth, but I couldn't help but feel underwhelmed that Rust did eventually believe in some form of cosmic entity, just because he had a subjective near-death experience and quote-unquote felt the presence of his dead daughter. I mean, again, was that it? He's a believer now, just off that one experience, which was beyond reason, which could have been injury-induced trauma. It could have been the drugs the hospital gave him. If that happened to somebody else, Rust would be the first person to criticize it and rip apart that man's belief. It just plays into a tired stereotype of the rational skeptic atheist versus the theist whose ideals only ever come from an irrational belief, illogical faith, and hope that there's something out there. And he goes from being on one side of the fence to the other. Does he now no longer believe human consciousness is a tragic misstep in human evolution just because he had a feeling that he interpreted as his daughter? His earlier musings in the show now have an extra level of cringe attached to them, because now you're well aware that this man is a bump in the head away from 180ing his opinions on life and the universe, that his nihilism was just undiagnosed depression this whole time. I felt there was much more there. I mean, after all, the duo's competing worldviews and philosophies were the core of the show. But it was easily wrapped up by Cole's ho-hum near-death experience, taking down one of the many bad guys he's faced in his life, and his subsequent corny Disney movie "She's With Me" speech. And I say that as a theist. I just feel what Cole should have encountered that managed to shake his worldview should have been unfathomable, awe-inspiring, and dark. But again, just fat hillbillies. So all in all, a great show, but not one that I'd put on such a high pedestal as it seems many do.